Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into a really interesting little book that quite a few of you suggested. James Allen's As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And what's striking isn't, its length or anything. Allen himself said it came out of his own meditation and experience. It's really meant as a simple guide almost for discovering the power of your own thoughts.
Right. This is the 6th edition from way back in 1908, but the ideas feel, well, timeless.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it really tries to light up just how much our thoughts shape, well, everything.
Exactly. So our mission today is to pull out the key insights from Allen's work for you. We want to get to the heart of his arguments about thought and its consequences.
And he starts with a big one, doesn't he? That core aphorism. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Simple words, but he argues it covers basically every part of life.
It really does. He's saying a person is, quite literally, the sum total of their thoughts. Your character. That's just the complete picture of all those thoughts you've had.
He uses that plant analogy, which I think is quite helpful. Like, every action springs from these hidden seeds of thought.
Yeah, even the things that feel spontaneous or out of the blue, he traces them back to those seeds.
And the potential here is huge, right? He says thoughts can be tools to build these amazing lives, these heavenly mansions of joy or
weapons we use against ourselves.
Well,
It really comes down to whether we're applying thought in the right way or the wrong way.
think about it. Every worry could be like laying another brick in a prison wall you're building around yourself.
While gratitude might be opening a door, he's very clear on that cause and effect relationship between the inner world and, what happens externally.
But the empowering part is his claim that we are the masters of our thoughts. We're the sculptors of character.
And therefore, the makers of our condition, our environment, even our destiny. He sees this inherent power, intelligence, and love within us.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we become the master?
Well, he talks about self-discovery. It involves really watching your thoughts, paying attention.
Tracing where they come from, what effects they have.
Exactly. And then consciously altering them, guiding them. He says that's how you gain real knowledge, wisdom, and power.
And it's not some secret club. He calls it an absolute law.
He that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. The effort itself, that inner searching, is the key.
Okay, so let's get more specific. How do these thoughts actually show up in our lives? Starting with our circumstances. He uses another metaphor here. The mind as a garden.
Right. A garden we can either actively cultivate or just let it, run wild with weeds.
So actively pulling out the impure thoughts, the negative ones.
Yeah, and deliberately planting and nurturing the good ones, the pure, the useful thoughts. It's about conscious tending.
In this inner gardening, it doesn't just stay inside our heads, does it?
No, he argues it inevitably shapes our outer world. Our circumstances, our environment, they directly reflect that inner state. They're tied to the core thoughts we hold.
That really challenges the idea that things just happen to us by chance, doesn't it?
Completely. Allen is pretty blunt. You are where you are because of the law of his being, because of the thoughts you've built into your character. Forget luck or chance, he says.
So circumstances aren't random, they actually tell us something.
They reveal us to ourselves. They're like a mirror. They don't make us who we are, but they show us what's going on inside.
And he connects this to our goals and aspirations, too.
Yeah, whether we're kind of moving towards virtue or sliding into vice, it's linked to the thoughts and desires we consistently cultivate.
It sounds a bit like you reap what you sow.
Very much so. He calls it thought seed. Good thoughts yield good results, good circumstances. Bad thoughts, well, they yield bad results. It's presented as a consistent law.
He gives some pretty direct examples, too. The poor guy blaming his boss, but secretly slacking off.
Or the rich person suffering from gluttony, but unwilling to change their desires for health.
Oh.
Or the greedy boss cutting wages, who then faces bankruptcy.
All pointing back to the idea that we are the cause, fundamentally.
We are the cause of our circumstances. It's not just external forces. It's our ingrained thought patterns playing out.
And it's not just about what we consciously want, is it?
Right. He says, we attract what we are. Those deep-seated thoughts and desires, whether foul or clean, they get fed by whatever we're dwelling on internally.
Okay, what about suffering then? Where does that fit in?
He sees suffering as arising from wrong thought, basically. Being out of sync with this law of being.
So it's a sign of disharmony.
Exactly. But not as punishment. More like purification. A signal that something needs adjusting internally. Real blessedness, he argues, comes from mental harmony, not just having stuff.
So facing hardship isn't about giving up.
No. He says real growth starts when we stop whining and blaming and start looking for the hidden justice behind it all. Using circumstances as tools, really, to find our inner powers.
And these thoughts, repeated over time, they become
Habits. They crystallize into habits. And then those habits solidify into circumstances.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He talks about like base thoughts leading to sensuality and maybe poverty down the line, or fearful thoughts leading to weakness, dependency.
But positive thoughts.
Beautiful thoughts lead to grace, sunny circumstances, pure thoughts to temperance, peace.
So we can't just snap our fingers and change our circumstances directly.
But we can always choose our thoughts. And that choice, Ellen insists, will indirectly but surely shape the circumstances we end up in.
Okay, let's pivot to health. The mind-body connection. Alan is pretty direct here. The body is the servant of the mind.
Yes, that's his stance. It obeys the mind's orders, whether they're, conscious decisions or just automatic habitual thoughts.
And negative thoughts can actually make us sick.
He argues unlawful thoughts lead towards disease and decay, while glad, beautiful thoughts can actually help the body stay youthful and healthy. Think about chronic stress, right? That's fueled by anxious thoughts, and it definitely impacts the body.
Versus maybe the effects of meditation or positive thinking.
Exactly. He says sickly thoughts manifest in a sickly body. And fear. Fear can be as deadly as a bullet, in his view.
Wow, so the body is just incredibly responsive.
Highly responsive. Impure thoughts, he claims, can even harm the nervous system, while strong, pure, happy thoughts build vitality, grace.
So if you want a healthier body, the starting point is
the mind. Purity of thought is the foundation. He even says changing your diet won't do much good if you don't change your thoughts first.
That's a radical idea for many people.
It is. Clean thoughts, he believes, lead to clean habits. He even suggests that if your mind is purified, you're less vulnerable to things like germs.
So protecting the body means protecting the mind.
Guarding and beautifying the mind, yes. Things like malice, envy, discontent, he says, they rob the body of health and grace. You can even see it on someone's face sometimes, right? A sour look from sour thoughts.
And the alternative?
Fill the mind with joy, serenity like air and sunshine for the soul, which then reflects in the body. He even notes that wrinkles can come from sympathy or pure thought, not just stress or age. Right living leads to a calm old age.
So it's an active cultivation of the positive.
Definitely. Cheerful thoughts help dissipate illness. Goodwill helps ease grief. Dwelling on the negative creates a self-made prison hole. Thinking well of others brings peace.
All right, let's shift to thought and purpose. We need a goal, basically.
Yeah, Alan stresses this. Without a purpose, thoughts just scatter. They drift aimlessly, he says, and that can lead to, disaster.
So if someone lacks a central purpose in life,
they become vulnerable to worries, fears, self-pity. All things that, according to him, lead straight to failure and unhappiness.
So what's the process? Conceive a purpose.
A legitimate purpose in your heart. And then you have to focus your thoughts on it. Steadily. Make it your supreme duty. This takes self-control, concentration.
But what if you try and fail? Does that mean the thoughts weren't right, or?
Not necessarily. Alan sees huge value even in failure, if you're striving purposefully. The strength of character you gain. That is success, in a way, and it's the launch pad for future wins.
Interesting. So the effort itself builds something important.
Exactly. Focusing your thoughts on your duty, your goal, it gathers your focus, your resolve, your energy. He believes it makes impossible things possible.
Even overcoming personal weakness.
Absolutely. Through effort, practice, will, patience. You can build strength. Even someone with weak thoughts can become strong by thinking rightly, purposefully.
So to get out of that aimless state,
you have to start thinking with purpose and see failure differently, not as the end, but as part of the path. And crucially, shut out the doubts and fears. They just break the chain of effort.
Where does willpower come into this?
Alan says it springs from knowing what you can do, from that knowledge of your own potential. Doubt and fear, they're the enemies of that knowledge. They lead to failure.
But purpose, combined with focused thought.
Fearlessly allied with thought, he says, becomes a creative force.
Okay, this flows right into the role of thought in achievement. He makes a strong claim. All achievements, all failures are down to our thoughts.
It's a very strong stance on individual responsibility, isn't it?
Totally. Is it really that absolute, though? What about, systemic issues or just bad luck?
From Alan's perspective, yes. He'd argue that your weaknesses, your strengths, your purity, your impurity, they're yours alone. Only you can change them. Your condition, suffering, happiness, it all grows from within.
As he thinks, so he is. As he continues to think, so he remains. That's pretty clear.
Very clear. And you can't rely on others to fix you, essentially.
A strong person can help, maybe guide.
They can help if the weak person is willing to make the effort. But real strength comes from your own efforts, your own inner work.
He even challenges the whole victim mentality.
He does, suggesting the oppressor and slave are cooperators in ignorance, which is a controversial idea for sure.
But his point is that true freedom comes from
Conquering your own selfish thoughts. You rise by lifting your thoughts. You stay weak by refusing to lift them.
And this applies to worldly success, too.
Directly. Success comes from sacrificing confused thinking, focusing, developing plans, relying on yourself. The higher the thought, the greater the success, the more lasting the achievement.
Does morality play a part?
He believes the universe favors the honest, the magnanimous, the virtuous. He points to great teachers throughout history, emphasizing cultivating virtue through uplifting thoughts.
And he distinguishes between types of achievement.
Right. Intellectual achievements come from thought dedicated to knowledge, to beauty. Spiritual achievements, the highest form for him, come from holy aspirations leading to wisdom, nobility, true influence, blessedness.
So achievement isn't luck, it's
The crown of effort, the diadem of thought. It needs self-control, resolution, purity, righteousness, and well-directed thought.
Let's talk about visions and ideals. Alan says dreamers are the saviors of the world. That's quite a statement.
It is beautiful, isn't it? He thinks the visible world is actually held up by the invisible visions of dreamers. Our ideals today are the reality of tomorrow.
He uses examples like Columbus, Copernicus.
Buddha, too. People who held a powerful vision and saw it through. He urges us to cherish our own visions, our ideals. Because delightful conditions, a heavenly environment, they grow from those pure thoughts.
To desire is to obtain. To aspire is to achieve.
Powerful, yeah. The higher your dream, the more you become like that dream. Your vision is the promise of what you can be. Your ideal is a prophecy.
Even if your current situation is difficult.
Especially then. Circumstances might be tough, but they won't stay that way, he argues, if you hold on to an ideal and strive towards it.
Like the story he tells of the poor youth.
Yeah, who dreamed of intelligence, refinement, purpose, and eventually achieved a life of influence because he held on to that vision and worked towards it.
You will become as small as your controlling desire, as great as your dominant aspiration.
That sums it up perfectly. It completely dismisses luck.
He really doesn't like the idea of chance.
Chance is not, he states flatly. People who talk about luck just don't see the effort, the sacrifice, the faith that went into the achievement. Gifts, possessions, they're fruits of effort, visions realized.
And his closing thought on this is so memorable.
It really is. The vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal that you enthrone in your heart, this you will build your life by, this you will become. A real call to harness that inner world.
Okay, finally, let's touch on serenity. Calmness of mind, he calls it a beautiful jewel of wisdom.
And he sees it as a result of long effort and self-control. It comes from ripened experience, understanding these laws of thought we've been discussing.
So it grows with self-awareness.
Yes, understanding yourself, understanding others, seeing cause and effect clearly, that allows you to let go of worry, to stay poised, balanced.
And it's not just a passive state. It has benefits.
Huge benefits. The calm person governs themselves well, adapts to others gracefully, naturally commands respect, and tends to be more successful, even in everyday things. Equanimity actually fosters prosperity, he thinks.
He describes the calm person almost like a refuge.
Like a shade-giving tree in a thirsty land. Stable, strong. Serenity is this exquisite poise of character.
It sounds like the ultimate goal, almost.
He calls it the last lesson of culture, the flowering of life, the fruitage of the soul. More precious than gold, he says. He contrasts it sharply with just chasing money.
And the lack of it. Explosive tempers, lack of control.
Very destructive. He notes how few people really achieve that finished, serene character.
It does seem like many people are tossed about emotionally.
Yeah, driven by uncontrolled passion, ungoverned grief, blown about by anxiety. Only the wise person, the one who has controlled and purified their thoughts, can command the winds and the storms of the soul.
So serenity comes back to controlling thoughts.
Mastering your thoughts, finding that sunny shore of your ideal, even when life's storms are raging. His final words on it are so potent. Self-control is strength, right thought is mastery, calmness is power. Say unto your heart, peace, be still.
Wow. So wrapping up this deep dive into As a Man Thinketh, the real takeaway seems to be Well, it's all about thought, isn't it? Your thoughts are the architects.
They build your character, your circumstances, your health, your achievements, and ultimately that sense of serenity.
And the truly empowering part is that it's not just happening to you. You have the ability, the power, to shape your life by shaping your thoughts.
It's an incredible potential we all have.
Definitely. So maybe something for you, the listener, to reflect on today. What kind of seeds of thought are you planting in your own mental garden right now? What sort of harvest might they bring down the line? It's worth thinking about that deep connection James Allen highlighted, the one between your inner world and your outer experience.